So generally speaking about the market, it's been the sharpest slowdown since the 90s, effectively over the last really year and a half, but also partially last quarter as well. Restructures, redundancies have been quite the common theme across the market. Role consolidation, businesses looking to make most positions a hybrid role, a data science slash engineer or an analytics engineer, not just doing the reporting, but some of the back end stuff as well. We've got obviously some stats here on the economic context. We know that the RBA has had consecutive interest rate cuts, likely to have another one as well by the looks of it. So yeah, everything is cost minded. And a lot of businesses are sort of preparing for that. And likewise, it's been a tricky market, and I think some of you would agree with that sentiment. However, we are starting to slowly see that bounce back.
Yeah, obviously there's no denying the market's been all over the place since after COVID. But COVID, it was easy to get a job in a sense compared to now, and it's the total opposite. Companies are being a lot more thought-proof in terms of the people they hire and being a lot more selective on things that they maybe shouldn't be based off external noise, AI. There's so much going on. There's no one single source of truth as to why the market is the way it is right now, other than some of the things that you can see on the screen around unemployment, inflation. Obviously, you've got to factor in the global wars that have been happening maybe last year with obviously Russia, Ukraine. There's so much different intricacies that have gone on in the economic world.
Yeah.
That have caused it to be what it is. Like the 90s, even the GFC, the crush then, it was pretty, I wasn't in recruitment then, I was still in school, but people who we know who have been in recruitment during that period of time said that this downturn has been the same, if not worse than what it was from the GFC. So there's a lot of different factors behind that, really, that we'll address here and get some questions from you guys as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, AI, obviously it's the top of everyone's tongue. It's what's making executives all giddy and excited about what's to come. But obviously that has different meanings. And I think, as technical specialists yourselves, you're probably seeing the experimentation side of things, the hype and acceleration of deployment, and, what's been realistic and what people are hoping for has changed. I made a LinkedIn post, I think it wasn't too long ago, around job descriptions, businesses looking for people with experience with ChatGPT for 10 plus years, 7+ years, things that didn't even exist. And it's just a culmination of, I think, the rest of the global market obviously picking up and accelerating at a rate that we've never seen before. And likewise, everyone trying to jump on the bandwagon. But what we noticed this past quarter was pressure to prove return on investment heading into this year and beyond. Experimental phases, a lot of businesses have been through that already, especially your enterprise or blue chip clients. Likewise, customer service, automation and document processing is where it's hit, very quickly. But now there are other pockets of AI, we've got Gen AI, we've got RAGs, we've got chatbot developments, etc., all geared towards, improving customer service, lowering costs and automating a lot of processes. So we're still in that phase where most businesses are either building out a center of excellence or even hiring heads of and senior positions to take over this domain. And it's still very much a developing area in our market, especially in Australia. We tend to lag, 6 to 12 months behind the rest of, Europe, US, Asia markets. So just looking at what they're doing now probably gives you a bit of insight as to what's to come for us later down the track. I think that's sort of the main slide there.
Obviously, AI has been dominating the market and nobody really knows what the hell is going on apart from Mr. Altman, who's created all this noise in the market. Well, maybe if anybody has any questions specifically around the AI market, we'll give 3 to 4 minutes just to bash in a few questions.
Guys, if you can't think of a question now, just send me a DM or an email follow-up. Happy to have a one-on-one conversation as well, sometime this week or next week, in case you can't think of anything right now. So data, I will let Sean lead that one.
Yeah, so this one is a bit of both. Obviously, like, the world has exploded in the last 12, 18 months with AI. And if you look back at the data/business intelligence market over the last 10 years, holistically, 10 years ago, a data engineer was a BI developer and all it was BI stack. BI stack cloud was barely even a thing. It was starting to come to market, but it wasn't. 90% of businesses weren't hosted on cloud and had had no real runway to do so. And then it's just exploded. There's been coming out of everywhere. You have data scientists, analytics engineers, data engineers, and even data engineering in its own world right now is so chaotic with all of the tools, all of the noise. Everyone is expected, not expected, but you'll see a job description and it will literally have 15 different tools. And if you're a job seeker, that's so overwhelming when realistically within that business, a lot of people are just putting job adverts up based on ChatGPT and what they think looks good to attract people. So it's a very skewed market. It's difficult for everyone, not just job seekers, but even businesses themselves. They don't even know what they want. And there's a lot of misalignment in the market from what is reality versus what is needed, because people have this fear of what's 3-4 years down the line, or even 2 years down the line of what's to come. And they're trying to future-proof themselves by not just hiring in, for example, a report developer who can build Power BI dashboards. I think that may be a role that not gets redundant, but automation and AI is going to be able to do Databricks intelligence platform. These are going to be able to do these reports at the click of a finger that you don't need to scramble and pull the data. That will do that for you. So yeah, the market is totally skewed. The sexiest jobs, we've got it on this here, is everybody wanted to be a data scientist when that boom happened in 2017, 2018. The whole world wanted to be a data scientist. Then that progressed into an ML engineer, which in theory they can still be the same type people. And now it's AI. So the booms and booms and booms happen. This one is just totally different to what we've seen from the surge of BI, business intelligence developers. Then it was data scientists, then it was data engineers, ML engineers, and it's just a revolving wheel of roles coming out and new brands, new titles, and it's so overwhelming. So as a job seeker, if you do, obviously getting an interview firstly is quite difficult in this day and age, but if you do get yourself in front of a business that looks somewhat of a good role for you, you're also interviewing them. Don't just sit back and have those questions asked. Be strict and be firm. Obviously, you might feel a little bit down, or you might feel a little bit burnt out with all the applications not getting anywhere. But at the end of the day, you don't want to get into a job after all of that hard yards in the background, accept a role that is not what it was supposed to be based off the job description. So if you see a role in your interview and it has 15 different technologies under it, the reality is probably only going to use 3 to 5 of those tools intensively, and you don't need to have experience in the other. So asking those questions, what are the top 3 tools that you guys are using? What are the top 3 things that you need? What is the business problem? The tools are there to help solve the problem, but the business problem is what is the underlying thing that needs to be solved, and the tools are there to be helped. So don't get too wound up with all these new tools, and it's going to continue going this way with everything coming out. So just do your due diligence, I suppose.
Yeah, and just to support sort of what Sean's saying there, I've heard stories from candidates that have started new roles that have been labeled with AI this, AI that, but the reality is they're still doing a lot of the foundational data sort of regular projects that you're probably used to doing, whether that's reporting, whether that's engineering, whether that's even just statistical analysis, forecasting, insights, etc. Things that have been around for 10, 15, 20 years, but they're just labeling it as such because there's a promise that in the future these businesses will build AI teams, if not, try to build them now. So it's very important that you identify that if you are interviewing for an AI so-called role, that they're either working on those projects already or that there is a defined timeline. If it's a bit of hoopla or vague description, then be prepared to do a lot of regular either data science work, data engineering work, or reporting work for at least the first 6 or 12 months, because that's happened quite
Especially with startups as well. Like, you don't build a house with the chimney on top first. The main thing that I want to get across is the fundamentals of data engineering and the fundamentals of architecture, bodies of how these platforms are built for scale, for performance, all boil back to the simple fundamentals of stack data warehousing components, how to scale a data warehouse. You don't need to have DBTs, airflows, all of these different things, churning models, all of these different things going at one time. Focus on the basics and don't get overwhelmed with all of the technologies that are out there. As you can see down the bottom, Python and SQL are the real value in all of this. Understand your SQL, understand your Python, understand databases, data modeling, and how to develop a database and not these whole cloud systems. They will come part of the journey, but focus on the underlying fundamentals is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is more of a general outlook as to the last quarter and what we're expecting to sort of come next. So the 6 key factors, it's a make or break year for not all businesses, but a number of these projects that have launched into the AI, either POC or experimental phase, you could call it. If you're not going to start to bring either some return on investment or some real value to the business, then some of these projects will lose funding and maybe resort back to a more traditional data unit. Talent split, proven AI performance are going to command a premium. I'm sure you've all seen the stories about these in the US, mostly realistically, tens of millions of dollars in bonuses. And it's crazy what's happening in that space. They're like celebrities almost nowadays, especially what Zuckerberg's doing with his lab. But as a result, that's had a knock-on effect on all these other either startups or product companies that are either based here or across APAC, where those AI performers are commanding a premium. If you can't effectively work on these newer projects, or you don't have that experience, then don't oversell yourself, because we're also seeing a bit of that where people are just listing all the keywords to try and get an interview, and then they get to that interview and the depth of knowledge, it just isn't quite there. And that's been a tricky thing to identify. Maybe you have that skill set, but you have to be prepared to face 200 or 300 other applicants. So be picky with where you apply, making sure that it's maybe within your domain, or you actually have the relevant experience when you put your application forward, because you'll get found out effectively, or you won't hear back for 4 months because they're speaking to 150 other candidates as well. What else is important here? So the contracting market as well. I think Sean could probably speak to that a bit more.
Yeah, the contract market, no doubt, has been very much up in the air since the last, I would say, not so much the last year, but like we'd seen a big surge in contract demand from maybe October 2024 in the sprint up to Christmas, continued from late January all the way up to realistically June. And then obviously new financial year coming up, people trying to get budgets in order, contractors being axed to make execs happy on the balance sheet. It's history repeats. They always go up, they always go down. But it is usually a slow start in July into August. We've definitely seen a decrease in contract demand. There are still long-term programs kicking off that do warrant contractors to come on board to help deliver. But there has been a major shift in the outlook of potentially offshoring and an emphasis on that. Not every company is doing it, but I know, I don't want to name businesses, but there are a lot of companies that we would have dealt with who have made that shift to overseas, whether it's India, Singapore, Malaysia, wherever it may be. And the mindset behind that obviously is cost. You can get 2 or 3 developers, 2 developers for the price of 1 almost if you do offshore it, but that will be interesting to see where that ends up. I don't think the contract market will come back to full stability. If what it once was in the COVID days, it will not happen again, especially rates, but the market is definitely going that way. Projects need to go get running, and obviously when projects aren't hitting the timelines, contractors need to come in to plug these gaps. So that is always going to be something that happens in the market, whereby new financial year comes out, permanent vacancies increase, consultancies increase vacancies like crazy. Permanent processes take a long time to have somebody from first point of interview to start date. You've got 4-week notice periods. Interviews tend to take 2 to 3 weeks, if not longer. Contracts, you're almost looking between 8 to 10, sometimes 12 weeks before someone can actually join from the point of first interview to contract initiation and them actually stepping foot on business for day one. That's a long process. If businesses have lots of projects going on at the one time, it's evidential and inevitable that contractors will have to come in to fill these gaps. So the contract market is not dead, it's just slower than where it once was. But yeah, I think that's the main ones.
No worries. So challenges, obviously job seekers, I'm sure you've probably face your own set of challenges, and if you've got a unique case, then as I said, if not now, then either DM myself or Sean and we can answer some of your questions. But generally across the market, what we're seeing is companies are valuing efficiency, cost saving and regulatory awareness. So, a lot of automation from the AI side of things and just making things a bit more efficient really across the spectrum. Now that means different things to different people, but just being able to show, again, that business value, that impact that you've had on your CV, on the projects that you've worked on is far more beneficial than just showing your skill set. I've used X tool and this tool and, I've got these certifications, which are all great to have on your CV, but unless we can't see your direct application of Python towards a model that led to this increase in efficiency or this sort of return on investment, then it becomes really tricky for us to sell you into an end client. And likewise, when you apply directly to a role, those are the things that internal talent people are going to be looking for. It's, what value have you been able to drive from your impact? And if you haven't had that chance in your role, maybe you're a bit more junior in your experience, then personal projects and things like that, a GitHub profile, things that you've done on the side to showcase your ability to either use these tools in a productive manner it's something that could be applicable to a role that you're putting yourself forward to. And then from the hiring manager side of things, yeah, again, it's just proving that. So, that revenue, that impact, and then again, the ability to communicate that clearly, because sometimes you're going to be reporting into a manager that isn't technical from a data perspective, doesn't have the comp sci or engineering background that you may have. So being able to translate, these programs, these projects that you've worked on to a more business wider audience or audience will be super helpful. So working on those presentation skills is my recommendation because it is very helpful.
Even as well, just on the resumes, guys, that we see a lot of CVs that, politely speaking, are illegible to read in terms of, if you read a book, how easy is it to follow the sections? The simpler, the better. You don't need to have all these different fonts, different colors, different side patterns and headers and everything all fancy looking. The simpler it is to read, the much better it is. Literally, skills section, about you, obviously education, your role that you've worked, title, 6 or 7 bullet points, achievement, all literally in condescending order, not all over the place with 2 sides on it with lists down the side. Just please make your CV as easy as possible to read. It's not frustrating to see, but it's potentially leading to you guys not portraying your experience to what it could be. And the more easier that is to read, it's not a stigma, but there's a thing going around the market where people think everything is AI looked at. You've got these ATS. I need to put these skills words in to match and hit the ATS. And I've even seen posts online where people are saying they're writing in white letters on the Word document and putting in all these keywords so that they get flagged by an ATS. Maybe large scale companies like huge conglomerates are using these ATS systems to filter it out. Every CV that I get, I don't advertise every single role, but every CV that I get, I read, I have a look at it, and the ones that are straightforward to read are amazing, but the ones that are all over the place, you're not representing yourself in the best light if you're having your CV anything other than simple.
Yeah, simplicity is the key CVs. Skills in demand. Look, I'm not going to read through all of these, but you can sort of take a snapshot or feel free to take a screenshot of what the buzzwords at the moment. I know these are quite vague, especially the plenty of transformer architectures, diffusion models. Computer vision in itself is a whole separate genre you could really speak about. But these are the things that perhaps if you've explored or if you're passionate about or you're working on relevant projects, just try to keep that skill up, because these are the areas effectively that are going to be relevant not just for the next quarter but for several years. From what we've seen, obviously the AI market could change at any point. We've got supercomputers and massive farms being built in the US, and I'm sure you've seen those things. So who knows what's to come? We literally can't predict that. But for now, these are the core areas that are really hard to find, and to get executives and hiring managers giddy about. So future-proofing yourself, if you had to look at things to sort of explore, I would recommend these areas to sort of take a look at.
Last quarter, in terms of roles and vacancies, yes, there's definitely an increase in demand. Our major indicators as to when the market is picking back up, number one is when consultancies start to hire like wildfire, and it's evidential. If you look online, you can see a lot of consultancies are really ramping up and hiring. That's number one of a good rebounded market. Number two, permanent vacancies outside of consultancies, we see an increase in demand in that as well. So we've seen those two indicators. The third is contracting is flowing, and that means projects there's a lot going on in the market. Looking back compared to this time last year, it's a totally different market. There's a lot more going on. There's a hell of a lot more projects that are happening, but definitely businesses are being a lot more strict in terms of the people that they hire. Again, bringing it back to nearly the start of this webinar, once we opened it up, we'd mentioned they're almost trying to get 3 hires in one. Someone who knows a bit of DevOps, who knows a bit of AI, who knows a bit of data engineering, data modeling. It's like these people don't exist, but companies don't understand, but they don't realize that these hires, are coming at a premium if there are people who know all of this. But it's definitely a changed market, but a lot more busy in the last
quarter,
last 12 months even.
And for this quarter, we're expecting or predicting based on the last sort of reports we've done. Sentiment is positive. Rate cuts and low inflation drive confidence naturally, and are spurring businesses to spend. Just from the conversations we've had around the projects that are coming to market. Over the next sort of 2 to 3 months, it seems a bit more optimistic. Generally the way they're speaking, it's not one hire, it's not two, it's a squad or multiple hires and maybe a few contractor requirements that will come. As Sean said earlier, we're still sort of in July, still in that planning sort of strategic phase, but I would say towards middle of August, September, October is when there'll be a number of roles and active interviews happening. So if you are going to start looking and you're maybe not finding what you'd like to see just yet, then be patient a little bit because those roles will come. And as I said, reach out to either myself or Sean or your trusted recruiters. A lot of roles aren't often advertised, so just asking, what's on the market, what would be a good role for me is always helpful because, companies don't want to over-advertise because of past experiences where they get 300 applicants and then it's, a bit of a minefield trying to get through all of that. So they're being a bit more discreet as to how they promote roles as to not, sort of deal with that, that ongoing issue, I suppose.
We'll stop now on this.
Yeah.
We've done last quarter, this quarter, what we expect, and now over to you guys. If there's any specific questions or anything that you wanted to touch on that we've spoke about so far during the webinar, ask whatever you want. We'll answer them to the best of our ability.
Right, guys, just jumping back on before we officially log off. Hello again, my friend. Good to hear from you. Your question was, are there any roles for more senior folk in terms of experience or in leadership in AI for companies? Yeah, it's a good question, Gordon. I would actually say, this quarter and last quarter, to be honest, has been quite slow at the executive and more senior level of AI leadership. Naturally, that's a very, not saturated, but a heavily competitive market. We've not just got talent from Australia and New Zealand applying to these positions, but we've actually got talent from Singapore, from other parts of Asia as well, applying to Australian roles just because of the gravity and the opportunity, right? If you're able to lead the AI transformation for a business at scale, then that's an amazing time to do it now whilst this AI boom is happening. It is very selective and very slow. Unfortunately, we've had roles open since, I'm going to say April, May, in terms of, interviews have started and they're still not being fully defined just because a lot of these companies are still figuring out what their AI mission and transformation will look like. They'll start with a job description they'll give us, usually with all the buzzwords and key things they're looking for. And then throughout the interview process, they'll reassess and say, oh, actually, after speaking with this person, maybe we go down this route or we go down this route. So it's constantly evolving. We've had roles being put on hold and put on pause, which is probably why I haven't had the chance to get back to you as well. So my apologies. But at the same time, I do think that will have to change just because we've been in this sort of reoccurring cycle for a number of months now. And businesses, like we've spoken about today, are going to have to deliver on this return on investment and can't just keep teetering around making a hire. They're going to have to make a decision sooner rather than later. So I would say if you're still actively looking, mid-August, September, I think is when you'll start to see a number of roles come to market. Target those roles that are domain specific, what you've done before, what you specialize in. And again, just work on those CV tips around delivering business value, especially at a leadership position. Technical skills are great, but they're not going to be the core focus. Strategy, business impact, return on investment is going to be what sells you in, and being able to sell an AI strategy to the non-technical stakeholders within that business, because you'll obviously be chatting with them as well, is where candidates have been successful. Yeah, effectively, I hope that answers your question. But again, it's a case for a number of leaders like yourself, mate. It's been really slow across the market more generally. So fingers crossed that turns around soon enough.
Alrighty, guys, no more questions in the chat bar, so we will jump on our afternoon. And I hope you have a lovely afternoon and day, guys, and hope to chat with you soon.
Thanks, guys. Take care.